So, imagine your world is just crumbling. Your home's about to be destroyed, your people are facing exile, and it's right then, in that moment of complete despair, that a prophet delivers a message. Not of doom, but of this radical, almost unthinkable hope. Today, we're going to unpack that incredible promise from Jeremiah chapter 31.
To really get the weight of this, you have to picture the scene. We're talking around 586 BC. The Babylonian Empire, this massive superpower, is right at the gates of Jerusalem. The city's about to be burned to the ground, its people dragged off into exile. This isn't just a political crisis. For them, it was the end of the world. And it's into that darkness that Jeremiah starts speaking.
So how exactly does this promise of hope unfold? Well, in verses 22 through 30, Jeremiah lays out 4 incredible transformations. We're going to look at a totally new kind of divine action, a deep healing of both the land and the people's spirit, a radical shift in God's mission, and then finally a revolutionary new idea of what justice even means.
All right, let's kick things off with verse 22. This one promises to counteract centuries of Israel's spiritual instability. God is about to do something completely new. So the prophecy starts with this really pointed question. And this phrase, backsliding daughter, it's not just some poetic insult. No, it's a direct shot at Israel's long, painful history of breaking its sacred agreement, its covenant, with God. It speaks to all those years of spiritual wandering and unfaithfulness.
So what's the solution to this chronic problem? Well, the text says God will create a new thing. And whenever this phrase shows up, it's a huge signal. It means a completely unprecedented, powerful act of God is coming. It's a total pattern break.
And this new thing is described with one of the most mysterious and honestly, most debated phrases in the entire book. Now, while it's puzzled interpreters for centuries, for the people hearing it back then, it carried a really powerful and specific symbolic meaning. Okay, so here's the crucial point. It's all about reversal. See, in the ancient world, the man was always seen as the protector. This image flips that completely on its head. Israel, so often pictured as this vulnerable partner, will become strong, secure, and stable. The nation's fundamental weakness is going to be transformed into strength. All right, let's move on to verses 23 through 26 and see how this promise builds. Now it broadens from just reversing weakness to healing a nation that was physically and emotionally shattered by war and exile.
Just try to imagine hearing this as you're watching your capital city burn. A promise that Jerusalem would one day be known for justice and holiness again. It would have sounded absolutely impossible. This isn't just about rebuilding walls. It's about restoring the very soul of the nation.
And this restoration, it isn't just spiritual, it's profoundly practical. Verse 24 paints this picture of complete normalcy and peace coming back to the land. You've got farmers, shepherds, families. All the signs of a stable, secure society will be back. In a time of war, a vision like that was an incredibly potent symbol of deep security.
And notice how the focus shifts right here in verse 25. It goes from the external to the internal. This isn't just about rebuilding walls and replanting fields. It's a promise to heal the deep, collective trauma of the people, to refresh the weary soul and replenish the sorrowful one. It's a promise of profound psychological and spiritual healing.
And then, in verse 26, we get this incredibly intimate line from the prophet himself. After delivering so many messages of doom, this vision of hope is so profound that it brings him a sense of peace. It's almost like Jeremiah is telling us, look, this message brought me deep comfort, and it should do the same for you.
Now verses 27 and 28 introduce one of the most powerful reversals in the entire book, a complete pivot in God's declared mission towards his people. The image of sowing here is just so powerful. After the devastation of war and exile, the land would have been empty, the population decimated. So this is a promise of new life, of repopulation, of renewal. God isn't just letting them survive, he's intentionally cultivating and growing the nation all over again.
And this slide just illustrates that change in verse 28 so brilliantly. The exact same divine energy and focus that was once directed toward judgment, plucking up and breaking down, will now be fully redirected toward restoration, building and planting. It's the same attentive God, but with a completely new purpose.
This brings the prophet's own journey full circle. His original difficult calling was to announce a time of tearing down and destroying, but now he gets to announce the flip side of that mission. The time for building and planting has finally come. The work of judgment is over, and the work of renewal
is beginning.
Okay, let's get to our final section, covering verses 29 and 30. This contains what is maybe the most revolutionary promise of all, a fundamental change in how justice and personal responsibility are understood.
So in the total despair of exile, this bitter proverb took hold. It was a saying that captured their deep sense of hopelessness, this feeling that they were trapped, unfairly paying the price for the sins of past generations. It was a crushing mindset of inescapable inherited guilt.
But the prophecy makes a stark declaration in verse 29. This era of generational fatalism is over. This way of thinking will no longer apply in the new reality God is creating.
And here in verse 30 is the new principle that's going to shatter that old proverb. From now on, the consequences of sin will fall directly on the person who commits it. Justice will become direct and personal. This was a complete game changer.
I mean, you have to understand, this shift to individual accountability was a monumental theological leap. It didn't erase the importance of community, not at all, but it did place a new and powerful emphasis on personal responsibility. For the first time, people were being told that their individual choices, their personal relationship with God, mattered most. This laid the groundwork for a much more personal kind of faith.
So, to recap, Jeremiah's message of hope really hinges on three profound transformations. First, a reversal of chronic weakness into a new kind of security. Second, the restoration of a devastated nation to complete physical and spiritual renewal. And finally, a revolutionary shift away from generational blame towards direct, personal responsibility.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? This ancient text ended a cycle of fatalism by introducing a radical idea of individual accountability. It really makes you wonder, how does a culture's future change when its people stop blaming the past and start taking ownership of the present?